Hello and welcome to Overtime Hockey Talk. You are listening to a special edition, an off-season report for the Detroit Red Wings, a team that my co-host Justin Baker is a huge fan of, has been for at least the last 43 years or so. And before you were even born, you were a Red Wings fan. Is that right? Did I hear that right?
That's true, actually. Yeah, no, my dad actually will attest to that.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, your dad was there with your mom yelling, "Go Wings, go." You might have just been a little egg somewhere buried back in the pack, but you were there.
Oh, this is great. Starting off great.
Yeah, obviously. We got to start off this way. Well, the Detroit Red Wings had about the season we expected. I mean, they're one of those teams where, we picked them to be near or at the bottom of the division, and it happened, and they make us feel good about our pick for where we put them. So, but a boring boring maybe isn't the right word, but I understand as a Leafs fan, it's hard to trudge through a season that has no meaning, like not a whole lot's happening. At least the Red Wings did send Franz Nielsen down to the minors in order to make some space for younger players. So there was some of that, but the Red Wings, they're going to need to continue to work this rebuild. I just want to get your thoughts as to what they're going to do. I'm going to let you go because this is your baby here.
Yeah, I mean, there's no secret, right? This team is rebuilding, and this is Yzerman's team now. He's, obviously developing and making the prospects, the picks. He's a couple years into it now, and so, really the concern is just letting these younger guys get the available time, get the available treatment, development, and do it right, because they've got a lot of really, really good prospects as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I think the Hockey Writers Association dubbed them the 7th best prospects pool in the NHL. And so, they've got a lot of interesting prospects as far as, Maurice Snyder just got named the SHL Defenseman of the Year for a 20-year-old kid. That's incredible.
Yep, that's fantastic for them.
Yeah, Lucas Raymond, another fantastic pick that fell into their lap at number 4 last year. Joe Veleno, again, the big thing too, and as a Wings fan, obviously Steve Yzerman's trying to make moves to also acquire those draft picks, right? And I mean, we saw this year taking on the contract of Mark Stahl to acquire some assets there. And I think, this year, I'm not going to be surprised to see much of the same, because we see this Red Wing team going into next season with $48.9 million of cap space, which is absolutely crazy. And obviously this team, has a lot of holes to fill. They finished 30th in goals for, obviously 30th in power play percentage, 30th for shots for. So the offense just wasn't there. Granted, a lot of these guys, Dylan Larkin, Tyler Bertuzzi, spent a lot of the season injured, but, obviously there's a need for, more scoring, more offensive guys. And so you might see it with, guys like Lucas Raymond coming up this year. Who knows if he's going to play full time or not? And who knows if Stevie's going to actually make a big splash in the offseason. I know they just had an interview with him, and he came out and said that, he doesn't want to deal draft picks to acquire big-name players unless just the right deal comes along, which, in Steve Yzerman's mind.
Oh, you mean like everybody else?
Right.
Hey, do you want to trade big draft picks for players? Well, only if the right player comes along. Well, yeah,
exactly.
Jeez.
But what I will say is he does it smart, right? And at least so far, what I've seen out of him, it seems like he hasn't made any moves that, like the few years before when you looked at Ken Holland coming in here, signing guys like Darren Helm, Justin Abdelkader, who they bought out because they signed these just horrendous deals that just hurt you. Franz Nielsen, you talked about him, right? In the minors to make space for some of these young guys. And I think the Red Wings had this delusion of they could, bounce back quickly with Ken Holland at the helm there, because they were used to 25 straight years of making the playoffs. So, why wouldn't you think you're invincible at that point? And I think the realization set in when they finally brought in Yzerman, and they said, hey, we gotta do this right. And here he goes making moves. And the one thing I think you can look at the Red Wings season and say it ended fantastic with was that Jacob Vrana deal, right?
Sure.
He goes and acquires a massive haul of picks. Not to mention, he gets rid of a guy in Anthony Mantha who is, as far as I'm concerned, a very streaky goal scorer. When he's hot, he's very, very good, uses his body well to protect the puck. But when he's not, he's nowhere to be found.
He just needed a change of pace, a change of scenery. I think Mantha was, for whatever reason, always seemed to be a little bit of a whipping boy.
Absolutely.
Didn't have the greatest playoff for Washington. It doesn't always happen super quickly, though. A guy doesn't always get dealt and finds his way right away. But I think that he will be used well in Washington, I think. But, yeah, Jacob Vrana has clearly showed that he wanted to be in Detroit. He was happy to be put into a position where he got to play more and play up in the lineup. 11 points in 11 games, 8 goals. Obviously, 4 of those coming in the same game. But still, 10 goals or 4 goals in 10 games, you'll take that all day over a regular. That's a 30-goal regular season, even without that 4-goal game. So Jacob Vrana definitely found his way that way. And those are the deals for a guy like Yzerman that you love, because not only do they bring him in, but they also got Washington's first round pick. Now Washington loses in the first round. Now their pick is, maybe in the top 20. I guess it's probably just below that, right? It's probably like 23, something like that.
Yeah, probably going to be, because the way it works out this year is basically they're going to basically see who gets eliminated in the first round, and then they reseed by, the way you finished in the regular season. And so, I suspect because, Washington finished high, they'll probably pick in, like you said, maybe the mid-20s, low 20s there.
Yeah. And that's generally how it's done, is like whatever round you lose, you're in that block of teams next in terms of the draft position, and then out of those teams, you basically rank them by points. And that's your order that you're getting in. So, so either way, it's somewhere around 20. So it's not a bad pick. It's not like Washington went and they go to the Stanley Cup Finals and you end up with a 31st overall or 32nd overall pick. Like that, it makes the deal extra sweet. A top 25 first round draft pick, and they got a second round pick next year too. So they banked in on that one. What do you think now? It seems like the Red Wings defense core is going to lose quite a few. Well, they're going to maybe lose Mark Stahl. My guess is that he looks for an opportunity because he had a halfway decent year with Detroit. We'll probably look for an opportunity to do something elsewhere and win, but. This defense core is kind of wide open. Is there anything outside of I don't think there's any doubt. Is Maurice Snyder? He's going to play in the NHL next year.
Yeah, I don't doubt
Sider.
it at
Sorry,
all.
I said Snyder. I think I don't know, Maurice Snyder. Cider.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt at all that he's going to be in the top 4 next year. It's just in what capacity. I think obviously if you're Detroit, you've got your RFA Philip Hronek, who was your leading point scorer for this Detroit Red Wings team as a defenseman. This guy is he's a top 4 defenseman, so you're going to get him re-signed. He's going to be up there. Obviously, Danny DeKeyser, I think they're going to give him another shot to continue to play some minutes while they develop some younger guys. And you're going to have other younger guys like Dennis Cholowski, Lidstrom, guys who can maybe play in a bottom pairing role, and obviously Troy Stetcher as well. They'll give him top 4 minutes. So I think if you're Detroit, really, I think you probably don't want to go out and make a move because one, you want to give some of these younger guys an opportunity to go out and earn some minutes, but then secondly, you don't want to hamper their development. And I think wasting it on signing a veteran when you're at least a good 3-4 years away anyways is probably a waste for some of these younger guys. So let them get the opportunity to play. Now, the other question is if you really think, maybe say a younger defenseman is better served in the minors, and that's, one thing when they can maybe get a little bit more minutes, a few more minutes down there. But, you know what I mean? I think obviously if you're Detroit, you would like to see some of these guys develop. And, I think probably the best plan for them would be to just play him as they got him. Not go out and really waste any money signing any veteran guys or big name guys, I guess I should say, because, the big name, on the free agent market is Dougie Hamilton. And, you could link him to just about, 29, 30 teams here. But, obviously I think he wants to go to a contender. And so Detroit will be off that list. And, with that said, why bother, signing a veteran guy like an Alec Martinez, when you can give these younger guys time to develop, give them the minutes and, really show them how to learn.
Yeah, maybe do you guys want Brendan Smith back? He's a UFA.
Yeah, that's very true.
There are some players that I guess I could see Nicholas Hjalmarsson fitting in there. I could see Yzerman going, and if Hjalmarsson wanted to come and just be a part of, like, sign a 1-year deal, come to Detroit, like somebody out there, one of these defensemen, you can look up and down the UFA defenseman list, and one of these defensemen, maybe two, they're just going to be out there on an island. Certain guys are going to get scooped up, and there's going to be guys that you didn't expect to not get signed. They're going to still be sitting there, and those are the guys that Steve Yzerman can go and say, hey, come sign a $1 million deal here, or maybe we'll give you $2 million, and you can come here and we can deal you at the deadline. If we're not any good, there will be those options for Detroit. So I don't have any problem with even them spending money, like bigger money on some guys, if they were able to bring in somebody of significance. Like what if Detroit was able to bring in Hjalmarsson, but it was going to cost them $4 million a year. Like if you can sign him for 2 years at $4 million for Hjalmarsson, well, he's a steady presence on the back end. He's going to be able to. You could pair a Moritz Seider. You could pair Philip Roenick. You can put him with just about anybody, especially younger guys who generally are going to be a better skater than Hjalmarsson late in his career. So then you've got somebody who can tutor and kind of show the ropes a little bit. Moritz Seider is German.
He is, yeah.
Yeah. I was trying to think: is there another German defenseman that you could bring in, and you both speak German? To just kind of, I don't know what his if he has any language struggles at all, but I know that for some of the Russian guys, it's always helpful to have another Russian that can you can communicate a little bit easier with, but. I could see Detroit bringing in somebody who is maybe a little bit better than you'd expect, and convincing them, hey, we're a team potentially on the rise. Like this team is at least they're fun. Like there's some fun aspects of this team, and they could have one of those New Jersey Devil seasons where they're well coached. And things kind of come together. They get extra good goaltending, and they squeeze into the playoffs. And Yzerman won't overreact to that. He won't go, "Oh, cool, we're ready to win." He'll just stay the course, won't care, and he won't do anything drastic. But I do think that there are some nice pieces on this Red Wings team already that everything could come together, and this team could actually contend for a playoff spot if they hit on a lot of these draft picks. If Seider is as good as advertised, like he's going to play for the Red Wings next year. He might win Rookie of the Year next year. Like he was that good overseas.
Yeah. And when let's face it, when you're as big as this kid is, he's 6'3", 208 pounds. He's a big body. He likes to hit too. So it'll be easy to cause a lot of ruckus and a lot of chaos. And he could instantly be, a force to be reckoned with. I mean, hell, he's playing in the World Championships right now with Germany. He's got 3 points through 4 games as a defenseman. Yes, the talent level's not as good, but there's still some good talent there. And even last year in the AHL, he played, as an 18-year-old with the Griffins. I mean, he put up 22 points in 49 games again as a defenseman. I mean, he's got the ability and the flashes to have both that defensive and offensive game there. So he's going to be a fun one to watch. And again, back to your point when you talked about bringing in some veteran guys, I don't hate that idea either, because I think Yzerman again has the idea of acquiring assets. And if you sign on these veteran guys who maybe, can't seem to find a long-term contract, because you always have those, 2 or 3 defensemen that hang out for a long time trying to find that 4 or 5 year deal where they just don't get it at the dollar amount they want. So they end up, taking a short-term deal, 1 or 2 years. And so if you're Yzerman, you maybe can scoop up one of those quality guys there, have them play some good minutes and help, bring up these younger kids, and then you can flip them at the deadline and acquire second, third round picks and, really, again, help build out for the future.
Yeah, I mean, there's, and as far as the forward position, there definitely are some players that that could fit well with Detroit coming back, as UFAs. I mean, there's any number of guys that could step in and play a role. I mean, I think that Valtteri Filppula is probably done in Detroit. They probably won't bring him back. I wonder if Luke Glendening will be back. I wondered why they didn't deal him at the deadline, and I wondered if it was because they said, like, we want you here for this. Like, we'll sign you after the season's over. He's just a good guy to have around. I think, like, there's a reason why a lot of teams asked about him at the deadline. They said no. Like, obviously the Red Wings felt like, probably the like 5th or 4th round pick they could have gotten for him at the deadline. They didn't want it in exchange for being able to have him around.
Yeah, I mean, he's a great veteran presence, a great locker room guy, but not only that, I mean, he's a fantastic penalty killer. He was the best faceoff guy in the NHL this season, so why would you not want, that kind of player around your locker room? And he's not gonna cost you much. He might cost you another $1.8 million, 1.7, who knows?
Right.
You sign him for a couple of years, and he can play 4th line minutes, and he still has the ability, because of his defensiveness, to move up and down the lineup, if needed because of injury.
Yeah. What is there anybody that you're hoping? I hope the Wings bring this guy in this offseason. Anybody that you're targeting?
Yeah, obviously there's a couple positions I think the Red Wings really want to look at the forward group. I know they have a lot of young guys, but I think there's one name in particular where I think Yzerman has shown in the past he's willing to take a chance on some guys. A name to me that comes to mind is Alexander Wenberg. He looked pretty decent to start the year in Florida, and I think because of their acquisition of Sam Bennett, I think there's going to be no room for him in Florida, and he'll be looking for a deal somewhere else. So maybe you take him on a 1-year contract as a project and see if he can, reignite his offensive abilities when he was in Columbus. And then again, if not, you can flip him at the deadline. And then a couple other names that I really like, obviously Blake Coleman. I think there's familiarity there with his time in Tampa Bay. He's got a little grit to his game, and the goal scoring ability is there. So he could be someone who could fit into your middle 6 role really nice with some of these younger players and still show that ability to play both sides of the ice. And then, another name that I look at too is Thomas Tatar, a UFA, a guy who in Montreal actually this year had decent numbers and pretty good possession numbers as well. So, maybe he's another guy who, again, familiar with this franchise, you could bring in on a, 2 or 3 year deal at a relatively low cost, and he can be there to kind of supplement those younger guys as they continue to grow.
I don't know if I could see Tatar coming to a non-playoff team. I don't know.
Oh, I agree. I agree with you. I think he's probably going to shoot for a playoff team. It wouldn't shock me if he, goes to a team like the Rangers or maybe, he's a very underrated. I'm glad you brought him up because he's such an underrated UFA coming into this year. We didn't hear anything about him because obviously Montreal is trying to win. But holy smokes, I mean, he is maybe like top 5 UFAs available, maybe better than that. I mean, he's been fantastic for Montreal, save the playoffs, but he's been really good and very consistent the last few years. This isn't just because it's the contract year. I think that he would be. I don't know if there's a team in the league that wouldn't want to have Thomas Tatar in their top 6. Yeah, no, I absolutely agree, and I do think again. Back to your point, I think he's probably going to head for a contender, somewhere where he can probably slot in on a second line and be, maybe that go-to scorer for that line. But, again, if Detroit's looking for goal scoring, for somebody familiar and who could probably come in at the right cost, I think Thomas Tatar would be a name to keep an eye on.
2 names, because the Red Wings I would say if there's a position at the pro level that they don't have a whole lot at, it's center, right? Like you've got Dylan Larkin. I think that Luke Glendening will probably be back. So you would have him if he resigns. If he doesn't resign, there really isn't a whole lot outside of Larkin.
I mean, they've got Robbie Fabry, but, is he going to be a second line center for this team for the long term? I don't know. Sometimes I feel like he's better suited on the wing, but, again, they still have a need for a guy to position in on a second line, or at least who can bounce between the second and third line center spot.
Yeah, one name that wouldn't be a bad signing for the Red Wings would be a Brandon Sutter. You can get him signed to a low cost deal. I mean, he's not a big point producer, but he's he can do a lot of other things outside of that. He can kill penalties. He's been in this league for a long time. He's like 32 years old. He can still put up the odd point. I mean, he in a 82 game season, he would have scored 18 goals this year. So that's nothing to balk at. Vancouver was just so bad this last year, but he could be somebody you could bring in. He could play up and down your lineup if you had to play him as in your top six. He could play there, but he could also, and I think probably better so, fits as a third line center and is a pretty good third line center at that, and could fill a need for the Red Wings, and at the same time wouldn't command a lot of dollar amount and wouldn't command a super long-term deal. So someone like Brandon Sutter, or maybe Brandon Sutter, would be, in my opinion, a great pickup for the Red Wings.
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate it if your thought process is bringing in a better
don't
guy.
Hate it. That's good.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, again, as a third line center, he would be totally fine for Detroit. I mean, you can't. I mean, again, I think you're probably going to see one or two signings of guys who get signed to these 1-year deals, and he could be a guy you could flip at a deadline to maybe get a 4th or 5th round pick out of, and acquire some assets. And again, if it pans out and he plays very well, maybe you keep him around. I mean, heck, you look at Bobby Ryan this year. I think it worked out pretty well for him in Detroit when he was healthy, and so.
And they would have definitely flipped him for something had he not gotten hurt right before the deadline.
Absolutely, and so again, it wouldn't shock me if they do that, and also too, it wouldn't shock me if Detroit goes out and, speaking of forwards, brings in a guy who's on a big contract who maybe some teams are just trying to get rid of because they just say, hey, you know what, we really can't afford to have this guy on the books here. We need to get rid of him. For example, this is very, very drastic, but, you could look at a team like the Florida Panthers. Maybe they're looking to get rid of that $10 million contract, and Detroit, with all the money in the world, says, okay, cool, let's make a deal. You give us something, you give us someone good here.
I don't think Yzerman's I don't think there is enough. There's not enough out there.
I absolutely agree with you. But more realistically, I think maybe you look at a name like a James Neal, right? A guy who, Edmonton would like to get a little bit of wiggle room as far as cap's concerned, because they have, guys like Tyson Barrie that they'd like to bring back, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, and maybe they don't have the money to do it. So, maybe you make a move to acquire him and you get a 2nd round or a 3rd round pick or something, substantial out of Edmonton for him.
Yeah. And I don't know exactly what it would take to drag James Neal out of Edmonton. But one other name that could be an interesting snag for Detroit. What about Ryan Johansson in Nashville? What about bringing in someone who they obviously, the $8 million that he's making a year is a gross overpayment. There maybe was a time when it was slightly justified, but it obviously is no longer. He can still play, like, he's still a top 6 forward. I mean, this year notwithstanding, I mean, he's still decent enough. And what if, Nashville says, hey, we'll trade him to you and we'll give you, I don't know what it would take, a 1st round pick to get him, to get the Red Wings to take his salary for nothing, like to not have to give anything else up and to hold on to salary, I would guess that it would be a first round pick. If the Leafs had to pay a first round pick for Carolina to take Marlowe's contract, granted Marlowe was a UFA and never played there, but maybe a first round, you package a first round pick and Ryan Johansson, and the Red Wings maybe dump, then they give the Predators Franz Nielsen. So then that's 1 year where, things are relatively equal in terms of the contracts. I think Franz Nielsen's 5.5. And, you let the Predators see if they can do something with Franz Nielsen. And then, hey, the Red Wings have this viable top 6 forward that they can use. Maybe he just isn't used at center anymore and he's used on the wing. But you have somebody that you can move up and down your lineup that gives you a little bit, gives Dylan Larkin somebody to at least take some passes from. I think Ryan Johansson can still be useful. It's just, do you want that $8 million on the book in 4 years? That would be the only question. But if it was in exchange for a first round pick, it might be worth it.
Well, yeah, if Nashville's going to give that up, but I don't think Nashville's going to give up picks to get rid of Ryan Johansson. I think they still like him well enough to keep him around and try to make it work, especially because, like you said, he's still a top 6 guy. Now the question becomes, at some point, when does Nashville finally decide, hey, this isn't working anymore. We have to do something drastic, right? And I don't think they're there yet. I think this team still thinks they can compete, and obviously they're doing an okay job right now in the first round. So that doesn't help their chances of blowing this team up and trying to start over again. So we'll see, but it would be interesting if they try to move Johansson in the offseason. I think if anybody is worth moving to make a splash and try to get something in return, Ryan Johansson might be a guy for them to try to get an asset out of.
Sure. Yeah, it's him and Ekholm, for sure.
Yeah.
What else you got on the Red Wings? What else you thinking? What about the goaltending position? I know Bernier is a UFA. Greiss is still there. Greiss didn't really look like the Greiss of the New York Islanders, but the Red Wings weren't the greatest. Actually, that's a lie. He actually played pretty well, didn't he?
Yeah, he started off. He started off actually pretty poor. I think he went like 10 games without a win or something.
I think that's where my brain was going. It must.
Yeah. But what I will say is he finished really strong, and if there is one good thing the Wings have had over the last year or two, it's been good goaltending. Jonathan Bernier's been doing very well since he got there, considering everything that he's had in front of him. And he finished well again this year, granted with some injuries. But from what I understand, I've heard that they want to bring him back, or at least that he wants to be back in Detroit and he's willing to stay. Now the question is again, how long do they want to keep him around? Because if you're Detroit, you have to look long term, right? Beyond 2 or 3 years that maybe Bernier has left to be very competitive. And really, Detroit, I don't know yet if they have that guy. They have some guys in the minors like Philip Larson, Caden Fulcher, who could be potential guys of the future. But, are they for sure things? No, not yet. We don't really know. So, this is a draft where there's a couple goaltending prospects rated very, very high. Now, I don't think if the Wings, finish in the top 10 would take them, but you could potentially see them using that Washington pick to select a goaltender and hopefully maybe finding somebody long-term, right, who can come in 2 or 3 years if he develops well and quickly enough that could potentially be there when Bernier and Greiss are finally out of Detroit. Now, to me, I don't think there's any free agents that they could bring in outside of maybe Bernier that would be worth going long-term on. You could look at a guy like David Rittich. Maybe you give him a couple of years if you want him to be, that pairing with Thomas Greiss. But honestly, I think is it an upgrade from Jonathan Bernier? No, not really. So in my mind, just keep what you have, and they have to draft something and they have to develop someone here soon.
Yeah. You don't have to. If nobody's there, it's not worth forcing. Like, there are always free agent goaltenders that will come in time.
Sure.
But when the time is right, the Red Wings could go out and spend some money on a potential UFA goaltender. They're always kind of out there. But
no, I don't disagree with you. I think because you could go out if you were Detroit, you were actually competitive. you could go out and acquire a Freddie Anderson or even overpay for a Tuukka Rask this year and say, we can compete with these guys, we can win. And so, yeah, you could do that, but I think ideally Detroit would like to develop somebody. And I mean, yes, every team would like that too, but it's whether or not they actually have somebody is the big question.
Yeah, and I mean, it certainly bodes well for the trend. We know that hockey is full of trends. Teams follow similar trends, and with Spencer Knight being taken in the first round and playing, I mean, that's a good sign. When you also have, Vasilevsky's a first round draft pick, Carter Hart's a first round draft pick. You have these first round draft pick goaltenders who are coming into the league pretty quick and being really good. So it's not like you have to wait till they're all 25 years old. And I think that's been some of the hesitancy, is that a lot of these goalies take so long to develop that a general manager goes, I mean, my contract is 3 years. I can pick a forward that I know has a chance to play in 2, but a goalie might not play for 6. They might not play till they're 23, 24, 25, 26, maybe even 27, like Jack Campbell. He's finally become a number 1 goalie, and it took him like 10 years almost. So I think there's a hesitancy due to that, but you get the right team at the right time who's willing to do something like that. And maybe it is the Red Wings, because Steve Yzerman is not going anywhere for a while. Like he could use one of those first round picks or one of his 3 second round picks on a goalie that they really like. I mean, they have Edmonton and New York's, the Rangers, for second round picks. So along with Vegas's 3rd round pick and Tampa's 4th round pick and Ottawa's 5th round pick. The only pick they don't have is their own 7th. So they've got plenty of picks in this upcoming draft. They can absolutely, I would be surprised if they didn't use one on a goaltender out of all those picks.
I absolutely agree with you. I think the prime spot would be to use one of those second round picks, because typically, with those first round picks, you want to hit on more sure things than not. And I think, like you said, you're more likely to hit on a forward, on a defenseman, than you are on a goaltender, at least in the first round. Just given the history, Florida's gotten lucky on Spencer Knight and Philly with Carter Hart, but that doesn't always work out for every team. Like you said, Jack Campbell took a long time to develop. And so, does Yzerman want to take a chance, when he's maybe 3-4 years away from competing again? Maybe not.
When you can let somebody else develop a goalie and let that goalie become a free agent by the time they're ready to actually win.
Right.
Or trade for one, that's the other side of it, is that if you think you got to
market. Yeah, we've seen the market. I mean, for goaltenders, like you said, trading is not that expensive to acquire somebody.
No, but once if you do hit on that franchise goalie, then you'll never get one, because they'll sign them to a massive deal. But there's just not that many of them out there. One final question for you: Jeff Blashill was signed to an extension after, really. Maybe I would love to know, in terms of coaches' records, how long they last with a losing record before a team moves on. But I mean, Jeff Blashill has never had a winning season with the Red Wings. I don't believe they've ever made the playoffs with him. He's been there since 2015-16. So he's. I think a lot of us thought that this is maybe it for Jeff Blashill, but Yzerman keeps going back to him. Obviously, Yzerman likes him, and I'm wondering what you thought of Jeff Blashill getting another extension.
Yeah, to be quite honest, I really don't have a problem with it from the perspective that really the Wings aren't going to be competitive for a couple of years, right? So, it really doesn't matter to me who they have behind the bench there, because
but you want somebody to develop these younger guys, right? Like,
yeah, absolutely. But who you want back there is somebody that doesn't win but can develop. And according to everything that I read, the Free Press, the Detroit News, and with what I'm hearing from Yzerman, they really like the fact that they think Blashill is a good guy to develop youngsters. And so if that's really their thought process behind that, more power to him. And I think we'll clearly see here in the next couple of years if he can live up to that hype, because, obviously he had some success in the minors with, some younger guys winning a Calder Cup with the Grand Rapids Griffins. But, to me, I think Personally, I honestly think it's all about development. It's not about winning right now for this team, and so a losing or a winning record doesn't really matter to me.
I made a mistake. He did make the playoffs his first year as the coach. That was when the Wings lost to the Tampa Bay Lightning in round 1, and it was pretty obvious that team was just, was their last shot at it. It was the 25th year in a row they made the playoffs, that whole deal.
Yeah.
But after that, his best season, 79 points. In fact, he had 79, 73, 74, and then 39 last year, which was just terrible. And he had 48 points in 56 games. So the Red Wings did play better this year than they did the following year. So maybe that's they see there's an improvement in terms of the way the team played. Because certainly this team was more entertaining than it was last season.
Yeah, and imagine if they had a healthy, Tyler Bertuzzi, Robbie Fabry, Dylan Larkin, and then, Verana for the whole year. Who knows where this team could have gone. So, to your point at the beginning of the show, when you said, this team could surprise people and be the next New Jersey Devil where they just make the playoffs randomly one season, out of, that would be fun to watch. But like you said,
I'm sure it would be. You're drooling right now. I can't see you, but I know you are.
I just can't wait till we get to a point here in the next few years where Detroit's competitive enough to really compete with, the Torontos in their division here, because me and you to get to sit down and watch a good playoff series between these two teams is just what I'm drooling over right now.
That would be fantastic. Speaking of playoff series, the Leafs are about to start. So I think that before we wrap it up, though, I have a feeling I know where you're going, but where do you see this team in terms of their development and the way that they're moving forward? Where did you have them ranked?
Yep, they're continual rebuild. I think they're basically 3 to 4 years out, much like the team we talked about in the last show, the New Jersey Devils. They just need to acquire prospects, acquire pieces, and maybe, like Yzerman did last year, use this cap space to acquire and take on bad contracts.
All right, and I think that's exactly what they'll do. Aside from, I hope that their higher draft picks get more of an opportunity this next year, particularly Lucas Raymond and very much so Moritz Seider. So,
yes, sir.
All right. Well, you can find us on Twitter at OT Hockey Talk. Let us know what you thought, and let us know where you think the Red Wings what they'll do in the off season, and until we speak again, and we go through more teams off seasons, we will talk soon.